when the deadliest tools of war became the last line of survival. There were moments during World War II when soldiers were left completely cut off. No resupply, no communication, and no backup. In those desperate hours, the difference between life and death often came down to ingenuity. A weapon wasn't just a means to fight, it was a multi-purpose tool, a lifeline, and sometimes the only thing that could get a man home. One of the most overlooked examples of this was a small, compact weapon hidden in plain sight, carried by scouts, downed pilots, and special forces alike. It wasn't just a gun, it was a survival tool, designed for far more than combat. Today we'll be digging into the story of that remarkable piece of wartime engineering, the hidden World War II weapon that doubled as a survival tool, and how its design still inspires survival gear today. The weapons story begins with a problem no army could ignore. By 1942, both the Allies and Axis realized something brutal. Dropping men behind enemy lines meant losing a lot of them. Paratroopers, reconnaissance pilots, and special operations teams often landed miles away from help, stripped of equipment, surrounded by enemies, and forced to survive on instinct. Traditional sidearms were just too heavy, too loud, or frankly, too obvious for covert missions. What they needed was a weapon that could be concealed, reliable and versatile enough to serve both in combat and survival scenarios. That need led to the creation of several remarkable hybrid tools, but one stood out above the rest: the FP-45 Liberator pistol. On paper, it was crude, made from stamped steel, designed to fire a single 45 ACP round, and meant to be disposable. But in the field, it proved to be far more than propaganda or theory. The Liberator became a symbol of adaptability. It could fire a powerful shot at close range, but what most people don't realize is that it also served as a multi-purpose survival device. Soldiers and resistance fighters quickly found ways to turn it into a hammer, a signaling tool, a small game-hunting weapon, and even a makeshift digger. The FP-45 was simple by design. 15 stamped metal parts, an unrifled barrel, and a hollow grip that doubled as ammunition storage. It was designed to be mass-produced cheaply, with over 1 million units made, and, dropped to resistance forces throughout occupied Europe and Asia. While its intended use was to let a fighter kill an enemy and take their weapon, its real-world use became far more creative. In remote areas or survival conditions, that hollow grip became valuable storage for far more than just ammunition. Soldiers and guerrilla fighters, well, they packed matches, a flint striker, fishing hooks, or even a small sewing kit inside. The pistol's short barrel made it easy to control at close range, making it, surprisingly, quite useful for hunting small game or dispatching livestock quietly. Some even repurposed its barrel as a fire tube, blowing air into kindling without getting too close to the flames. The shape and sturdiness of the frame also made it an emergency hammer for tent pegs, a pry bar for crates, or even a digging tool in loose soil. In jungle and mountain environments where every ounce of weight mattered, that kind of versatility was worth more than gold. The Liberator wasn't the only example. The British SOE, or Special Operations Executive, and American OSS designed multifunctional weapons for covert use. The Fairbairn-Sykes fighting knife, for instance, wasn't just a dagger. It was a survival blade. It could dig, cut wood, open cans, or even, strike sparks from flint. Many commandos carried compact revolvers or .22 pistols that doubled as foraging and signalling tools. But the key lesson from all of them was the same. A weapon was more than a firearm. It was a foundation for survival. Downed airmen were trained to use the metal from their sidearms to craft hooks, snares, or reflectors for signalling. Bayonets became stakes, machetes became shovels, and rifle slings turned into tourniquets. Every piece of issued gear was a potential tool for staying alive when isolated. For example, the United States Air Force's M4 survival rifle, issued later in the war, really embodied this philosophy directly. It was a lightweight folding gun, capable of firing both .22 caliber rounds for hunting and .410 shotgun shells for defense or signaling. It could take down birds or small game quietly and also double as a deterrent against predators. The lesson carried through long after the war. Modern survival rifles and multi-tools still owe their design roots to these Second World War concepts. For the modern survivalist or outdoorsman, the ingenuity of these wartime weapons carries a lasting lesson. Versatility is everything. In survival, every ounce must serve multiple purposes. A blade that can both cut and dig, a firearm that can hunt and signal, a tool that can repair gear, start fires, or provide defense. If you were to recreate the practical mindset of Second World War soldiers, the first step is understanding function over form. The Liberator was ugly, yes, but it was brutally effective in its role. It didn't need to be perfect. It needed to work. That mindset is what keeps survivors alive when supplies run out. It's fascinating how you can apply the same principles today by training yourself to use your tools beyond their obvious roles. It's all about learning how to strip down gear and repurpose components. For instance, a knife can spark a fire with a ferro rod. And, a metal barrel can become a cooking implement or even a signal mirror. Quite resourceful, isn't it? Now, let's talk about something as simple as a piece of paracord. It's inspired by wartime parachute lines, and, believe it or not, it can serve dozens of purposes if you know how to use it. Quite versatile, wouldn't you say? After the Second World War, many of these dual-use tools inspired the equipment we still rely on today. The concept of a compact multi-role weapon, for instance, evolved into the M6 aircrew survival weapon used during the Cold War and beyond. It's remarkable how these innovations continue to influence us, isn't it? The field knife design philosophy that came from commando daggers and bayonets turned into modern survival knives with serrations, saw edges, and hammer pommels. Even the humble multi-tool traces its DNA back to World War II escape and evasion kits, which included miniature knives, saws, and screwdrivers hidden in everyday objects. What began as necessity became the blueprint for modern survival design. Today, when you pick up a modern survival rifle, tactical knife, or paracord bracelet, you're holding the legacy of soldiers who learned that a tool only truly earns its worth when it can save your life in more than one way. You know, the hidden World War II weapon that doubled as a survival tool really reminds us that innovation doesn't always look refined. The FP-45 Liberator, crude as it was, embodied one of the most powerful ideas in history. Adaptability beats perfection. When resources vanish, when you're alone and cut off, the tool in your hand becomes what you make of it. That's the same mindset that kept soldiers alive in the field, and honestly continues to guide modern survivalists today. The Liberator wasn't just a pistol, it was a lifeline, a hammer, a hunter's weapon, and a symbol of resilience. If you found this deep dive into forgotten wartime ingenuity valuable, don't forget to subscribe to Relic Logic for more stories that uncover the tools, tricks, and forgotten technologies that shaped survival under fire. And, share this video with a fellow history enthusiast or prepper, because knowledge like this doesn't just honour the past, it keeps its lessons alive.